Hey guys, I have Wasyl Wynnyckyj. He's the senior field service engineer at DUS. It's good to see you. Good to meet you, Wasyl. How you doing today, man?
Pleasure. Good, doing well.
Let's just kind of get into it. For
Sure.
the folks who have no idea who DUS is or who you are, just want to give them a little bit of brief about you and what led you to DUS.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been doing field service work for over about a decade now. Yeah, right post COVID around that time. I was in between jobs, as most of everybody was in the world at that time, and I don't usually do recruiters. And one day, randomly got a message from a recruiter asking if I might be interested in applying for this position out of New Jersey, and I was like, sure, why not? And I had met with Jeff and Joy shortly after in the interview, and it's a small world in ultrasound, so they knew the company I was previously with, and everybody knows everybody in this business, so it was good to meet them, and we sat in the first interview for over a couple hours, and that was pretty much it. Rest is history, and I've been here since.
What's your background? What kind of engineering experience do you bring?
Believe it or not, I actually did computer engineering. So I built my own computers, repair computers. Then many years ago, my original company that I work with, um, I met the owner when I was working at a repair company for computers. From that point on, he's like, "Hey, do you want to go check this out?" Then I started doing some of the work, and I mean, ultrasound is essentially just a different version of a computer. So from there, it was pretty much the rest is history, and I've been doing it ever since. So most of my experience with ultrasound engineering is pretty much hands on from the beginning. So
All right.
I've from the ground up.
Well, that's actually a good merge, right? When you bring
Yeah,
both hardware and software
yeah.
diagnostics into a playing field. So, what's the first thing you look for when a system fails, for example?
Sure. So first thing I always look for is I'll ask the customer pretty much what is going on, because a lot of times the biggest disconnect is from what's actually happening, what they're experiencing. So I've come to find out the best way to actually understand what actually the failure is by having an actual discussion of what they were doing at the time, how they were using the machine at that time, and it allows me an insight on how to recreate the issue. And if I can recreate the steps in which they are causing the failure, then a lot of times it allows me to find out what the root cause of what needs to be corrected or fixed.
Hmm, that's interesting. So, uh, if I'm looking at a new customer, right, for you guys, what's a common tech issue that seems small but can cause major workflow disruptions if left, right, if left unresolved?
A lot of the times, especially with new customers, and what we've seen with a lot with new installs is that a lot of techs become very accustomed to a certain machine. So, for example, a lot of like customers end up like, "Oh, I've been using the same machine for like 10 years," and to have them go from what they've been doing for 10 years and then suddenly jumping to new equipment, the biggest workflow disruption is lack of experience or comfortability with that equipment. So that usually ends up being the biggest thing, is that they expect everything to always work the same. And even though it's a different piece of equipment, it's just not possible. So a lot of times, what we've experienced and what I've experienced is that it's just that they're just not comfortable with doing things differently. You get so accustomed to doing the same thing every day, day in, day out. And the moment that changes, that's usually the worst thing. And people just don't lack the confidence really in order to do what they were doing, but differently.
Mm.
Uh, when it comes to service related issues, 9 times out of 10, um, my most of my things could be resolved generally with even sometimes with a phone call. And sometimes what we've seen is a lot of network issues or networking when they send studies over to what's called PAC systems, where they receive the studies, read the studies, go through and review the information. A lot of the times you run into is that it's issues with their network, and they think it's the machine or something wrong with the machine, but it's actually nothing wrong with the machine. It's actually something to do with their network or an IT issue, and that's like a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was actually speaking to your president, Jeff Alexander, the other day, and he brought up a good point about, when it comes to repairs, the balance of speed and quality, right?
Yeah.
Um, when a clinic is depending on you, right, when something goes down, what's it look like, to back up a system? How fast can you get them running?
It really depends on the issue at hand. I always like to at least start with having a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Uh, 'Cause it can be something as simple as turning it off and turning it back on again, as like the old adage is.
Reboot.
But yeah, just shut it down and turn it on. But a lot of times, what they don't understand is that time can be of an essence too. So even when you reboot something,
Yeah.
especially with ultrasound, pending on what the root cause of the problem was, sometimes even just letting it stay off for a period of time can actually assist. If it's
Yeah.
an electrical issue and something is blown out, a lot of times something will hold electricity incorrectly, and you need to let it just drain itself out and then turn it back on, and then things will resume normally again. Our At least that's where I see is that starting with that phone call and finding out what's happening and how can get them up as soon as possible, and at least in the interim while I'm on my way to the customer to at least be there physically. So if I can't resolve it over the phone, I'm already on the road driving to them while talking to them over the phone, and if I can resolve it, fantastic. I could just turn around and head back, but if it doesn't get down, I'm already on my way there to get it resolved anyway. So it works in two sides.
Yeah, you're kinda like this, hybrid model, right? Not
Yeah.
just, an engineer, you're also, say account management, right? So, let me ask you this, let's zoom out. How does your technical background help you build better relationships with your clients?
Sure. So, besides being very in a computer engineering portion of my background as well, I have a large portion with customer service. I did customer service over the phone for many years through local cable companies. I was in retail and for many years. So, a combination of having a really strong customer service background and over the phone customer support background for technical support combined with engineering allows me a very unique set of skills to be able to not only assist with the customer in person, but also allows me to assist with a customer over the phone, as well as also repairing their issue in person. So it gives me multiple different layers to be able to resolve issues
Yeah,
effectively.
I like that answer. I mean, let's reflect on that. Well, let's say something goes down, right? A particular, like, really complex service call that you gotta get on.
Yeah.
How do your diagnostic process help uncover possibly like a root problem?
So, for example, let's say, for example, the system is freezing. They're just
Mm.
using their stuff and it's freezing and it's locking up and they don't know what's happening. So usually I'll start with just trying to first walk the customer off the ledge that everything will work out okay. And everything is always an emergency when it comes to medical. So I try to just tell them, you can get through this. So the first question I'd be asking in a case of such as that is, when the system was locking up, what were you doing? Were you doing an echo? Were you doing an abdominal exam, linear, etc.? Would you be able to try to recreate the issue, just walk them through the process in which they were doing? And if we uncover something where it doesn't happen again, or if it was just a freak accident, a lot of times these problems, because they are computers, all computers have problems. And I just try to let them know that this is a very common thing. Computers always tend to lock up at some point. The best thing is to remain calm, go through the steps. Let's go ahead and just reboot the system, give it a couple minutes, turn it back on, retest the process again. Is it working? Is it not? If it's not at that point, the best thing at that time would be to try to go there in person. Is it something else?
Yeah,
When I get there in person, it goes through a whole process. So trying to recreate the issue, running diagnostics on the equipment. A lot of times with systems that lock up in those cases, it could be an overheating issue. It could be damaged equipment, such as like bent pins on the connector probe. There's so many different layers to it, but the best way that I've come to find out is just trying to put my feet in their shoes while they're doing the testing, because a lot of times with these issues they're so very specific to one thing that was happening at a specific time, and trying to recreate that one thing. If you're
yeah,
not able to do that, you're hunting ghosts. It's this figment of an imagination. You don't know where it's coming from. They only have the problem, and the amount of times I've walked into a building and be like, it's not happening. I was like, well, it was just happening. And I'm like, I know, I believe you, it was just happening, but it's not happening right now. And that's what you try to resolve, because it's so much harder to fix a problem if you don't know what the problem is. And
Yeah.
that's what a lot of times ends up happening is these machines, specifically ultrasound, tend to, if nothing is happening or nothing is wrong, everything says it's okay. So you'll run diagnostics and it'll be like, hey, everything's fine, nothing's no problem, because at that moment in time, there's no problem. So unless you can cause the problem to happen and then run diagnostics, then you can get a root cause of what that problem is. If it doesn't happen at the time, it's just going to think that everything's hunky dory and okay.
Makes complete sense. Actually,
Yeah.
like with the experience that you bring to the table, right? So what's one piece of advice you wish more clinics followed when it comes to like equipment setup, networking, maintenance?
I think a set of processes is
Yeah.
what really misses in a lot of clinics. So many clinics are pretty much either rotating doors of people and personnel walking in. Like sometimes they'll have like 6 different techs using one machine on one of each day of the week. So one person will be doing one thing, the next will be doing another. Nobody's talking to each other. Nobody knows what the other person's going on. Nobody actually cleans out the system. There's studies everywhere. Nobody knows what's going on. That's number one. A lot of times for other clinics, the worst offender is they'll forget to just do routine maintenance, because there's a lot of things as a clinician when you're using the equipment, and even through manufacturer, they'll tell you like, hey, you have to be able to know how to clean certain things. So like cleaning track balls and stuff like that. As for like networking and stuff like that, a lot of the times the first thing they always tend to do is just call me.
Yeah.
No matter what the problem is with the machine, it could be anything going on with it, it's always call me. And that's fine and all, and I can guide generally most people of like where they need to be or where they need to go, which I'm okay with. But a lot of times they don't understand, if the network is down in the building, there's nothing I can do to resolve that. That has to be forwarded over to their IT department or their PACS administrator, depending on the location. So a lot of times I feel like the biggest lack is communication within locations.
Yeah.
That there's no actual talking between the technician to the management to the overall working team. And a lot of times, unfortunately, techs are left hang out to dry on their own and resolve their own business, what's going on. And then only if they can't resolve it does it actually go to somebody who understands anything that's going on.
How do you feel DUS like helps with that? For example, I mean, are there any protocols in place or any frameworks that you feel like we can improve on or we're actually executing out into the market that helps them?
Sure. So I think a lot of what Dust does is especially specializes in, not to get redundant, but we deal mostly with customer service, supplying good customer service. And at that point, we also try to educate the technicians on proper processes. So when I work with a technician, my biggest thing is to make sure that they understand what the process is. So, as with all technicians, I try to communicate the fact that when certain things happen, to either reach out to certain people and, depending on that issue at hand, to be able to go in the right direction. Because in the end, that the amount of time that they waste not going in the right direction is more time that they're not up and running and working, and time is of the essence. So and that's what I try to instill in everybody I work with, is that my goal is to ensure the quickest turnaround in which they can be working, because the more time they are working, the less frustrated they are that they're not, because a lot of technicians can either be paid per diem, so they're getting paid for the amount of tech people they actually scan in the day, and by the time they're not scanning, that's taking money away from them. And some locations are very high stress, high volume, which generally is like medical centers, hospitals, such as that. By not being able to do those scans, that could be an emergency for a person not being able to get the treatment, and that could lead to negative health consequences, not only mostly for the patient at hand who's not getting scans at that time.
Hmm. All right. I'm going to end it with this one to get you off the hook.
Sure.
So, what keeps you motivated in this work, and what part of your role do you enjoy the most?
I think the one thing that keeps me motivated, and a lot of people, I feel like the best part of this job and just being an engineer, is that every day is different. There's no day that's similar to the next day. And I think that's something that's kept me engrossed in this business, is that there's always something new that you're either figuring out, something new you're learning, something new that's coming out. There's always something new. So there's never a day where it goes by and goes, oh, another Monday. Guess this is what I have to get into the office and do these things that I do every day. That is not the case. And it's also the worst part, but it's also the best part. So everything new every day, it could be very overwhelming too. So you have to be on top of it and educate yourself mostly to be able to stay on top.
Well, Wasyl, good job with this expert interview. I
Sure.
appreciate your time and doing this. And for those folks who want to learn more about dust, they could visit the website, dxuss.com, dexus.com, and learn everything about how this company is moving forward and moving the needle forward in a rapid pace and adding a lot of value in the diagnostic community. So thanks again for your time, Wasyl.
You're very welcome. And I appreciate your time and have a great day, sir.
Thank you.